What does world-class real estate look like to you?
Is a commitment to excellence when it comes to service.
It's do what you say you're going to do.
Estate agency that is delivering a really high level of service, customer service, a really high level of property marketing.
Being an all-rounder with regard to digital marketing as well.
Great agency belongs to personal agents operating in an entrepreneurial way, using tech, but keeping that personal touch and delivering first-class services for their clients.
Everything from service to marketing.
It's about bringing the absolute most that you can bring in any moment.
Really knowing who you are, knowing your lane, being really clear on your proposition and what makes you stand out, and then delivering that message relentlessly.
This episode is brought to you in partnership with Iceberg Digital. Hello and welcome to today's episode of the World Class Real Estate Podcast. My name is Mark Worrall, and as you know by now, I am joined by Mr. Ian Macbeth, fresh off the London Marathon. How are you, mate?
Yeah, legs are a little bit tired, back's a bit sore, but happy, feeling good. Yeah, feeling fresh, feeling ready to tackle this year's challenges, I think is the physical state for me. But what an event, the London Marathon, what an event. And to be part of the one where two people ran under 2 hours is mind-blowing. It blew my hair off, to be honest with you. So, yeah, I mean, that is extraordinary. And I saw a interview from the winner of the London Marathon, and they said, what was your morning prep like? He said 2 slices of bread with a little bit of honey on it and a cup of tea, so
yeah,
how superior can be normal at the same time, which is great. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. On that, it also goes to show that, it wasn't just one, it was 2 that did it. Once that barrier is broken, it's there to...
Roger Bannister, 4-minute mile scenario. We're going to see it a lot now,
Yeah.
It just is that you can use this analogy, but in running with business or estate agency, the tech is facilitating the ability to go faster, as in the shoes and what you're wearing, and the data is allowing people to train and become better as an athlete in the same way it is for us, because there's more data supplied. And the nutrition, which I account to the training in a estate agency, the nutrition that the athletes can have is the same as the training. Without the nutrition, you can't do it. How good is your training? That gives you the ability to break the records ultimately. So they go hand in hand, which is why I love both.
Yeah, and that sort of leans quite well into today's guest, who's been on a few times before, but actually is pushing forward and developing as tech and business allows him to. So Bryan Mansell from Gazeal we've got coming on today, who, as I say, has been on before, but has got some really exciting changes and advancements to how they're doing things that I think could be transformational for estate agents, whether you are big business and want to, look at cash flow assistance in the future, or particularly if you're a small business just starting out. So there's going to be some exciting conversations. And if you haven't already heard about what Gazeal have been doing over the last few months, it's going to be a really interesting listen for people.
Yeah. Brian's very knowledgeable, very experienced, very forward-thinking property guy, cares about the industry. And in the convo, we've got some great questions and some great things to reveal. So let's dive in with Bryan.
Let's do it.
If you're an estate agent listening to this, I want you to think about something for a second. Are you and your team busy, or are you actually being productive? Because most agencies right now are drowning in admin, juggling disconnected systems, chasing portal leads, and wondering why profits aren't where they really should be. Iceberg Digital have taken a completely different approach. Instead of selling another CRM, they've built what they call an AI operating system for estate agents, combining prospecting, marketing, CRM, compliance, even websites into one connected ecosystem. The goal? To increase your revenue per employee, because the agencies that win over the next few years won't be the ones working harder, they'll be the ones working smarter, with systems that actually do the heavy lifting. If you want to future-proof your agency instead of just surviving the next market shift, go and book a demo at icebergdigital.co.uk. That's icebergdigital.co.uk.
Bryan, welcome to the show.
Good morning, guys.
Not your first time, is it?
No, I've been invited back for good behaviour, which is unlike me. So thanks for that.
Not everyone does. So yeah, we appreciate you coming on again. Looking forward to the convo.
I did a little bit of research actually as we were getting ready. Almost 2 years to the day was your last appearance, and I think this is your third appearance individually. I think you came on with Sarah like a long time ago during lockdown. But I wanted to ask you the question that we always start with just bear in mind that you've been on before. Last time your answer to this question was 2 words: honesty and respect. So what does world-class real estate look like to you, and has it changed at all since 18th of April 2024, I think it was?
Well, it has a little bit. I thought about this as well, because I obviously remember what I said. It's always easy to remember the truth. Never forget it. But it's not, that hasn't changed. That's always been the ethos, right? Honesty and respect. But what has, shall we say, expanded my next answer is understanding, which is, and I'm talking about the general sense of understanding the role that you play, but also understanding your own business, because there is absolutely no question that estate agency businesses seem to be drowning in all sorts of technology and AI and this next big thing and this game-changing thing and this big thing and this, and they've got to be careful, because what could happen is it's a bit like TV subscriptions, right? You start off thinking, oh, it's only $7.99, I'll have a bit of that. And on that side, that one, I want to watch that program. That's only $8.99 a month. And I can do a 7-day free trial on that. And before you know it, you're spending £400 a month on TV channels that you're not really watching. And I've seen, without a shadow of a doubt, a rise in agents who have always been very good at the next new shiny thing that thinks that gives them an edge, and not really fully understanding how it fits into the model that they have from a business perspective internally, but also how to then use it commercially to make it work for them. And I see this with lots and lots of agents who are constantly looking and thinking, oh my God, I've got all these, let's call it a gym membership. I've got all these prop tech gym memberships, and we're not using them. And they try to cancel it. Good luck. You're locked in a contract for 12 months. So, and it's eating away at a lot of the bottom line. So that's understanding which tools to use that enhance your service offering, the why you're doing this.
There's so many out there, isn't there? It's so hard, because we've always known that in estate agency, estate agents are very sort of magpie effect. If they see something new and shiny, they kind of want it. But also if they see a competitor talking about something, or that they hear that a competitor is using something, they also don't want to lose the edge. So they get drawn into something that maybe doesn't even fit their model or fit their style. But because the competitor's got it and the valuer said, I need it, and they never use it, but they need it because someone else has got it, you get drawn into it, and it does compound, and it will eat profits. And we do know as well, Bryan, that estate agents don't have a fantastic profit margin, based on the structure of the business, really.
No, they don't. You're right. So I think, world-class estate agency these days is always going to be honesty and respect from my point of view, but it's also, having the ability to stop every 3 months or so and reassess, right, what's our message? I wonder if you went around many estate agency businesses and said, why are we doing this? You get the answer that you may have had when you started it. And that's, to me, always been, the driving force. That's the sort of, that's the banner on the wall behind you. All these buzzwords that we have these days, you got a few behind you, Mark, which is great. But, and it's these things all around us, but how often are we actually looking at that saying, is this us? What's our identity? And especially as you get bigger and bigger. 2 years ago, Gazeal was half the size it is now. But what we've been very, very conscious of, because I'm privileged to lead it, is, whenever we've expanded or we've recruited new staff, whatever it is, we're only recruiting on culture. We're not recruiting on any other, there's no other way we recruit. Don't care if someone, every day I get CVs from recruiters, I've got this guy been 2 years as a BDM, 3 years as a BDM for this prop tech startup. Yeah, of course you have. But that I'm not interested. What I'm interested in is people who match the culture, because their message has got to always be the same. So
it makes sense.
Talk us through then, if we're going to talk a little bit about culture, what are the things that you're really intentional about as building the business? Because those answers are very much aimed at business owners. Bottom line, I see Ian's eyebrows prick up when you're talking about that. He's very, very passionate about that and the shiny syndrome that a lot of agents have, and picking up all of those things. But what's the culture that you're trying to impart on all of the team members at Gazeal? What are you really intentional about when you bring people into the business? What have they got to fit, rather, because you're not looking necessarily at just the skills of having a BDM for 2 years, like you say, but actually what type of value should they have?
Well, the number one for us is how can they demonstrate during the interview process how they've helped other people? That's the first one. I've got a lady from Google, and her job was customer services, and she was completely focused on helping the customers solve tech problems, issues, logging in, which is quite relevant to what we have. But the fact that she was, and I questioned them on that topic. I'm not interested in where they went to school. I'm not interested in their degrees, their levels, the whatever. It's the social side of them, the character, which is where I see it. And how have you helped people? Tell me in the last 7 days, 2 examples of how you've gone above and beyond and helped someone. The second part of that is, how do you want people to feel? And that's very much the culture. We are very deliberate in terms of our conversations we have on the phone with potential sellers and buyers, with agents, even our legal team that I've worked very hard with to make them a bit more fluffy in that realm, which is not easy. It's about how your email that's very to the point, very assertive as it has to be, but how does that make someone feel when they read it? How do you want them to feel? And it's not about making everyone feel really cuddly and fluffy. And when someone's being quite vicious with you, you don't turn around into a wallflower. We are not wallflowers at all. But there's that's the two areas. And what sits over that, the helping and the how you make people feel, is the moniker, we answer, they ask. That is the fundamental culture of Gazeal. You know, we will answer the questions that people ask. We will not get in their face and start suggesting, pushing, selling, all that sort of stuff. But we will answer them with honesty and respect. That's back to that original point.
So you kind of,
tough, right? It's tough.
Yeah.
But you find, and what we've seen, which I think is, I've got a lovely, very, very quick human story on this, which I think is a great testament to what we've done. Since working with us 3 years ago, one of the ladies, a lady called Benita, who she's fabulous, who works with us. Since she started working with us, because we talk about this so much, about helping and all these things, she's then gone and started to volunteer. And she's doing volunteer work on a Sunday in, for homeless people, but also for stray dogs. She goes and feeds them in certain centres. She wasn't doing that before she came to us. Now, that's not a result of me and Gazeal. There's no prizes for me. It's just because that was her character, which we spotted. And she's obviously then tapped back into that and realised that actually there's a bit more she could be doing. So I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's great. It's having those personality types in your environment, whether you work with them or whether they're just in your circle, it does make you a better person when you've got those personality types around you, because you see how other people care for people. Just for the people that maybe have been under a rock, or agents that are kind of new into the game as well, talk us through Gazeal, talk us through the offering, just in its kind of simplicity of, what and how it helps estate agents and, more importantly, the public.
Well, that's a good question, because it's changed a lot since 2 years ago. So Gazeal helps the seller and the buyer of a residential property, helps them move through the transactional process, the sale process, with more certainty that the exchange, that their plan of moving is going to happen. We do that in 2 ways now. And what's becoming quite a popular way is because of the size of the business now and our history and our numbers, we match the lettings process now. So sellers of a property who are unsure of their onward move, or may have not yet found a house to buy, that sort of stuff, who sometimes are a bit nervous about making any form of commitment at the early stage, they don't have that choice anymore. They can simply ask the buyer to put down a refundable holding deposit on their property. So we can take, a deposit from a buyer. I say we take, that's the wrong word. We enable the buyer to be able to show commitment by placing an amount of cash, which is anything from 1,000 to 250,000, into a nominated bank account securely in the name of the buyer, which they get fully refunded on exchange of contracts, or fully refunded if the seller changes their mind or sells to someone else. Still, the most popular service we have is the reservation, which is two parties, buyer and seller. They will agree an amount of money that they will only have to pay if they default and break the deal. And they're not putting that money in, they're agreeing it as a bond, which we guarantee. So seller and buyer are both in the transaction, locked in together. They've agreed that if they break their commitment, they will compensate, let's say with 5K, and then Gazeal guarantees that 5K gets paid if someone backs out. Still super popular and very, very, and growing, doubling every year. It's doubled every year since we started, which is fabulous. So yeah, we do reservations and we do deposits for residential sales, land, new homes, with still a very strong success rate of 95.5% now exchange rate on the deals that we do. So
Whenever we talk about the Gazeal, and I'm more familiar with the reservation fees rather than the deposits. Maybe we'll talk about the deposit a little bit in more detail. But whenever we talk about Gazeal, and I hear you talk, or Sean Adams, who's in our mastermind, is a very big fan, does a lot of reservation agreements. It always just dawns on me that this is just a no-brainer. Why is it not every house transaction does this? Because I know this is something that you've said on your training, but you wouldn't buy a car and you wouldn't buy a holiday without making some form of financial commitment.
Well, you wouldn't be able to. That's the point.
No, exactly. But because we've always done it this way, I say to my clients when I'm talking about it, we do it. It's not even on a handshake. A deal for a house is often done over the phone. The commitment from a buyer to transact is so minimal, or to pretend to transact, let's say, is so minimal. So do you see that the perception of this, the public perception of this, is changing a little bit? Because that's, I think, probably the biggest challenge that we've had at Moving Works, of getting it through, because the parents of a first-time buyer might, for example, say, well, we've never done this. We've never heard of this. So do you think that there is a bigger desire from the public to have this commitment?
Well, I can only go by the numbers that are increasing every month and every day that we work on. So the appetite is there. Of course, there is always going to be people that are, I've not heard of this, I don't want to do this, which, could also be looked at as upon a deflection, as to actually we want to keep our options open. We don't want to stop looking, which that is the case, because we've always been able to look, and that's, we all know that's been the issue. It's definitely, the sentiment is definitely changing, so much so that we are in third level conversations now with government over this, who are keeping a very close eye on what we do. I have personally no particular faith that the government will do anything anytime soon. Look how long it's taken the Writers' Rents Act, which has been years. And I hope that this is the next thing that they do, is they look at this whole process that we've got in this country and do something about it. But they probably won't be in power long enough to affect that change. So, like all of us, we get on with it while we wait for support from central government. The sentiment is changing. What is, and obviously as markets change, or the dynamics slightly shifts around throughout a year, throughout a quarter even, of course they can become more popular. But agents, they're still the biggest problem that agents have. And I would say this is the opposite to world class, is that there are so many of them that think like, they believe that the public think like they do. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's a buyer's market. That buyer's never going to want to do that because there hasn't been any viewings on this house for 3 months, and so on and so on. That strangles the business. It's restrictive because they don't think like entrepreneurs, like marketers. They don't think like business people. They don't think commercially, because they're not. So that's our biggest challenge with anything new, not just with what we are doing. That's the same, you could say, with auctions, with financial services, with mortgage, with conveyancing, with everything else, is the market, the industry is strangled by nervous, not so confident estate agents who don't want to put a buyer off. The point that they miss, that we see a lot of when we talk to people, is I doubt there are many estate agents out there today, and they'd be world-class if they did this, that actually know why a buyer is buying now. Now, I came from a school, like some people did of my age, in the late 80s, early 90s, terrible market. We didn't care. People still bought houses with 15% interest rates and a negative equity. They still sold them. And that's the point. Why? or because they had to, or they wanted to, or because things in their life were changing. And estate agency, and I've said it so many times in the years, it's not about selling a house. It's about helping someone move. Now, when you, as an agent, when you look at it from and think, oh my God, we've got no buyers on this, and if that one buyer comes along, we don't want to put them off, you're in the wrong job, because you're not thinking for your customer, which is the seller. So if you stop and think, well, hang on a minute, we've had nobody, and here is somebody. So why are they buying now? Why don't they wait until next year? Why didn't they buy last year? Because there's a reason that's fueling that buyer. And when that buyer looks at a house, irrespective of what you think the market's doing, and makes an offer on that house, they obviously have some intent to purchase. There's a fundamental reason that buyer is looking now and offering right now. And actually, is it fair to say that buyer's attitude towards the property would be exactly the same in terms of wanting to make an offer if it was a seller's market, or there were 20 people looking at it? Yeah, it's an intent to purchase. That doesn't change depending on what's going on around you. So if estate agents can stop thinking like estate agents and start thinking like the public, then everything would change for the better.
Also, the key thing on that, Bryan, is our job is not to get a property under offer, to try and help and assist to get the property under offer and then, sort of go on to the next job. The job is to get it to exchange with an agreed completion date so that people can move. That's the target. So the fear of not having a property go under offer because the buyer is not ultimately committed to doing something like that, that's not the job anyway. So it's just one step towards it, and they were most likely never going to do it. But going back, the real key point here is, did you say 95.5% of these transactions actually go through? And I think that for estate agents is, whenever we talk about it, it always picks up ears, because it's typically 60% at the moment is probably fair on what's listed, something like that. So that makes a huge difference. That makes a huge difference commercially to the business owners, but anyone on commission that's getting paid on banked commission, which is the majority of the industry, it makes a huge difference to them as well. But again, going back to the seller and the buyer, that's something that, do you feel the challenge is how estate agents explain it, or how the public understand it? Obviously, if the government come in and announce it everywhere, it's going to be easier because it's more recognizable.
Well, it will be, but let's be honest. I mean, I think the first question we've got to ask ourselves is, do we want the government to do it? I'm not sure I do, but that's not going to be my decision. I'm going to just take that back 1 second, because I think what you said there, Ian, is, does the agent have trouble explaining it? Yes, to an extent, but it also links to what I said at the very beginning. Let's be honest, it's very difficult for an agent these days, because there's just such a volume of things they want to try and talk about, that, back to my first point about understanding, right? You sit down and say, right, and I encourage agents now through our onboarding to do this, is to literally list all the things that you're going to be talking about, all the services you want to talk to a seller about. And rather than try and then think, right, which of those are absolutely essential, cannot remove them from the first conversations that you have? So that's the category A. What's your category B introductions? Ones that can wait until after you've done the listing. Ones that can wait 2-3 weeks into a life of listing, rather than try and pack everything into that hour, which makes people completely overwhelmed by features of an agency when you're just, firing things at them. They get they get overwhelmed and they can't decide. It's the old scenario of you can never park in an empty car park, because it's just too much choice, right? You get really great. Well, it might just be me, but so I think it's two parts. I think it's you understanding your business and when to introduce your customers to certain parts of your offering that enhance that particular part of their journey at the right time. So timing. And then it's the introduction. It's one of the reasons that we've brought deposits in as well, to make, and this was the word of 2026 internally for Gazeal, that affects everything we do, frictionless. the introduction of Gazeal service to a seller at the point of listing, when it's done with the deposit offering, is 100% converting because it's frictionless deliberately. And what we are doing now is we are seeing at the point later on down the line when an offer is being made and possibly accepted, then a conversation about compensation reservations are being converted into, because actually the buyer is quite aware of the deposit process in the world, right? Particularly if they've been a tenant, which a lot of them have.
And buyers often say, don't they? Sorry to interrupt, Brian. Buyers often say, and we've had it over the years, probably hundreds of times, I'll put a deposit down. It's like, we've heard that very often from buyers, put a deposit down. And my comment previous was, solicitors hate that. And that stopped us doing it.
Yeah. So we probably, I would say, and this is unchecked, but I'm going to check this later on today now, I've thought about it. I think we get as many deals like that, Mark, every month, where an agent who we may have spoken to 6 months ago, or they've heard about Gazeal somewhere, speculatively calls us that says, I'm not working with you, but can we do this? Oh, well, what's got you thinking about that? Oh, the client's asked for it.
Yeah.
Well. So if you've got one client that's asked for it, doesn't that tell you something that maybe that's valuable to people? So you might want to think about that. But then we don't hear from them again for 3 months. It's like, well, okay, cool. As well, as many of those deals happening now every month as we do from our customers, like you talk about Sean, and we've got lots of other people like that now, thankfully, that are, 60, 70, 80% of their deals are going through, some of them not listing without it now. And quite a few of them are now getting customers to opt out of the deposit service because it is it's absolutely the right advice, is it not? You can sell on the open market and take your chances with someone walking away at any point, or you can do that if you want, but you can ask your buyer to leave a deposit, which at least show you at the beginning of how serious they might be.
What sort of numbers are those deposits, Brian? How is that set?
Yeah, so people can put down anything from £1,000, whereas with the reservation, it's £2,000 when there's no money going down, and that is purely psychological. If you're putting down £1,000 of your own physical money, you're not going to muck around.
Yeah.
If you're not putting down £1,000 of your own money, you may very well do, but the point in which you won't is 2,000. So the deterrent points, we call them. So £1,000 up to infinitum, right? 250 is the highest we've done, 250,000. But the fact is, because we're not having to guarantee that, we can then directly pass that saving, because we're not buying insurance on it, because the physical cash is there. Yes, we're paying for the banking services under the FCA and all the money we have to pay them. Then we charge half the amount for that. So £1,000 deposit from a buyer carries a fee of 120 quid. And typically, because that also is very deliberate, because it's so low, quite often it's the seller that wants to pay that. The agreement that we draw up is exactly the same. It can be changed, it can be amended. It's very flexible, very bespoke, all of those things, but generally covers survey, mortgage, title, and chain. And the buyer, 24 hours if they have a problem reasonably and can't go ahead, gets all their money back.
And when you do the training for these types of services or new offerings for estate agents, what are the classic objections that you get from probably the estate agents that aren't the owners? The owners want it, they understand the commercials of it, but then the staff struggle a little bit. What's the most common things that staff often struggle with?
Most common things are is what I said before, or if I was a buyer, I wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to jump in there, Brian, because you're right. I think estate agents often think that, and I think we all like to think that everyone thinks like us. So when you're doing it day in, day out, you get this, me too sort of syndrome. But yeah. I think what a lot of estate agents miss with this is how fearful buyers are of being gazumped. Yeah. There's a real acceptance in the industry that it doesn't happen very often, but a lot of buyers have heard friends, parents, whatever, that it might have happened to. And sometimes they don't necessarily know that maybe it's fallen down or they've failed with their onward purchase, but maybe still lump it in that gazumped sort of phrase. But a lot of buyers are actually petrified of that. As you said, even if they're the only buyer in town today, and they've been the only buyer in town for 3 months, that doesn't stop them being scared of being gazumped because their parents were gazumped. Or now we're coming into a period where they were gazumped when they were trying to buy in COVID. So the buyers really have a fear of that I think, as you say, a lot of estate agents maybe miss out on.
Yeah.
But when we last spoke, which is why I organised this, we talked about one of the big shifts that you've implemented within Gazeal this year that I think will revolutionise the industry. Not to overstate it, because I think it is a big deal what you're setting up and how you're trying to do it. Do you want to explain that a little bit more to the listeners?
Yeah, well, there's two things that we're doing, and these are very deliberate, and we're able to do them now because of our size and our success, and they are both designed to help people. Okay, the first one is to help the agent, and the second one is to help the public. Okay, and that's why we're doing them. But we're also doing it because of feedback that we've had, and we understand the market because we're buried in it every day. So the first one is we now have the facility, the credit facility, to advance the estate agent's commission to them on the day that they sign a reservation agreement, which is on average, that is 4.5 months before they receive that from completion. So simply, if the estate agent, and it only works with our reservation service, not with the deposit service. So if an estate agent's got a $5,000 fee, they put together a sale, willingly sellers and buyers go into a reservation, which is obviously very common. The agent at any point from then, should they ever need the facility to do so, can actually ask to receive their commission payment. So they would then send us a copy of their signed terms of business with their client. As long as the client matches the agreement and the title, so it is the ownership confirmed, we will then advance them their commission, which they keep, and then simply on exchange, they would invoice as normal. Once they've been paid after completion, they then send the money back to us.
So you're getting paid within a week of the deal, basically?
Well, you're getting paid within 24 hours of a reservation being signed. If you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you want to. You don't have to, and we've begun to see people look at this in different ways. We have, we have some of the self-employed agents that get to sort of month 3, month 4, where they're not quite getting those 3 or 4 deals they've done over the line just yet, and they're spending a disproportionate amount of time trying to, from cash flow point of view, but they're then getting hamstrung in this little, because they're, the money they've had to start up the business and protect themselves from a salary point of view is okay for most people. But what they really struggle with is they just don't have the money to market their business until those transactions start to come through. And of course, that then kills that, well, doesn't kill the model, but it grossly restricts that model commercially. So we see people coming to us, starting to now from some of the particular larger groups, asking for, and we've had some, what's interesting, not all of their commission. They don't want all of it. They want a little bit of it.
Yeah. Okay.
£1,000 here, £2,000 there. They get a bill in, they can do that. And it's not a credit loan facility. So there's no imprint on their business. There's no, credit that's going to affect their credit score or anything like that. And if the deal goes wrong, they don't have to pay that straight back at all. We can work with them over the next 6 to 12 months or the next deal to look at how to offset that on future deals. So they're not suddenly going, oh God, it's fallen through and now I've got to pay all that money back. And, so they don't have that challenge either. So that's really, really positive. And if you've got a pipeline of, we've got some agencies have got pipelines of 200-300 properties with Gazeal, that want to acquire a business or put down a deposit for an asset purchase or something like that, they can come and take, £200,000, £400,000, to enable them to do that on terms far better than ever get from a bank, or a lending facility.
It's interesting. For the self-employed model, it makes a lot of sense, because that's the fear factor that a lot of the agents are ultimately going to have is, what am I going to do for cash flow over that period of time? And not every agent is totally comfortable in taking a marketing cost from the seller up front. No. They definitely want to. More and more seem to be doing that now, which is helping with that cash flow. But ultimately, if you can get some of that money moving earlier, it just starts the conveyor belt, and you're in the right momentum then.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the one to help the businesses. The second one, which to me is the bigger one, and I've been looking at this now forensically for the last 18 months. When we look at the 5% or so of deals under a reservation that come apart, and you look at the general housing market for the number of property sales that are renegotiated, let alone fall through, the number one cause of that is the property survey. And I know, Ian, you're doing a lot on this as well, which I'm really, really happy that you are. The challenge that we've always had as agents, I think if we were all honest with each other, having a copy of a survey when you're listing the property would be a great advantage for you as an agent, because certainly in terms of accuracy and advice, it could be great. But more importantly, having that available for the owner of the house in terms of making sure their expectations are aligned with the agents, because often they're not, would be very advantageous, because they'd have a very clear idea of what they would need to do now. And I've looked at the same as I did before. Look at the car model. You tend to get your MOT done, or you get your car serviced or checked before you put it on the market and sell it. Sometimes you don't. You think, I don't care what I sell it for. I've got to get rid of it. Just get rid of it. But the majority of people don't. And then thirdly, with the surveys, you look at the buyer. So the buyer, it's one of the number one issues right now and I say right now, it's not going to change, that makes buyers nervous. We'll do that. We'll instruct our lawyers when we've had a survey. We'll apply for our mortgage when we've had a survey, because they've had it drummed into them, or you need to check. And if you've got a parent that's of my age, a Gen X, that goes around with your daughter, as I've done, knocking on walls, thinking they're surveyors, but they're more like John Cleese, you're putting fear into the buyer's minds. The challenge with having a survey done up front is someone's got to pay for it. And actually, if you're looking at putting your house on the market speculatively, and I saw this firsthand, as I'm sure you boys did with HIPS, paying £800 for a level 3 survey when you may not sell your house is prohibitive, right? And also from an agent's point of view, back to my earlier point about understanding, what happens if that survey shows there's works that got to be done? Is that seller going to take their house off the market and go and get that done? Then I might not get it back, and so on and so on. So we thought about this. So we're going to be talking about surveys, and this is linked to reservations, that can be done at the point of a listing and not paid for until 6 months afterwards or completion. More importantly, the survey that is done on the property will be available with full indemnity and certification for the buyer to be able to use, as well as the seller. Now, that part may not, and I don't suspect it will, deter buyers from getting their own surveys done, because that's what they've always done. But they will have, for the first time, RICS confirmation that that surveyor is reporting to the buyer as well. Now, if that benefits both of them and that we see a change, then great, but that's not the primary motivation. The motivation is to provide some information up front that is, in my mind, bearing in mind we've pioneered this for 7 years now, one of the most important from the purchase decision. A lot of the industry has jumped on the bandwagon that we started 7.5 years ago to say they caught us up. But actually, by catching us up, we've already understood that that's the wrong route. Because actually, buyers, it's, you might get all the information ready, but how do you influence the decision? And the survey is the number one influencer of that decision.
It's got the most trust, hasn't it?
Yeah,
the survey's got the most trust.
The price you pay, and actually your intent to continue. And to actually, you have buyers hit the remorse button at the point of survey more than any other time. So now, of course, from an internal Gazeal perspective, back to helping sellers and buyers, here's a much more comprehensive look at this property before you decide to buy it. But once you do, and you're in the reservation, the survey has now been disclosed. So that will then cut the survey clause from our agreement, deposit and reservation. And what we expect that to do is take the 95% success to 98.
I was going to ask on figures about how many people we think, because I was thinking, can we get to 100%? We'll never get to 100% because, but can you get to 98, 99? And what a massive transformation that would be for businesses. Because you're absolutely right. The survey, the importance of that is that the buyer can hold the surveyor to account, basically.
Yeah.
But this is very much your bolt and braces approach. You've got the reservation agreement. Both parties are committed, or the deposit agreement buyer is committed. They've got all of the information up front. If you're doing your legal packs up front as well, they've got all of that. They've actually got the information that they would normally get after 12, 16 weeks on day one before they even make an offer. So there should be no reason why a buyer should change their mind. And it should also make it go through a lot faster, right?
Yeah, it should do. Back to that other point about the legal information, the part that we're working on next, well, we have been working this as well simultaneously, is simply to take that information, because what we also know is, because we're a software business, we can see how many people complete a TA6, a TA10, a TA7, how many people then read it before it gets to the lawyers and so on. And it's an amazingly low number.
Really?
Doesn't surprise me.
Of course it doesn't, because you're looking at 20 pages. Well, the new TA6 is actually reduced to about 18, I think it is, or maybe a bit lower than that. It's just too much information, and it's still in the legalese. So what we are going to be doing is taking the TA6, the TA10, the TA7, and pulling that and putting it into a nice, sexy little package to show somebody the key information on a property that's been completed by the owner.
Yeah.
Not by AI.
It's funny because
that wasn't meant to be, a swipe at AI, because AI is vital in certain aspects. But trying to speed everything up by getting AI information actually is creating mistrust, which is going to slow everything down, because people will get all that work done and then they'll still want to go and verify it and check it. And particularly the conveyancing community, we know this from the conversations we're having with central government and a lot of other stakeholders. So there's a balance that needs to be found here, but actually getting the key information to people so they can enable them to make the decision for the next step. Because I think too much focus is on this whole area, because everyone's thinking we can get them. They're not going to make an exchange decision when they make an offer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and if you overload them with information, it's going to delay a sale starting. It's going to cause all sorts of challenges, which we've seen before. So let's rethink that now. What have we learned? How are we learning as we go? And provide information that is critical for that particular moment before the next one. And if you ask sellers, and you guys will know this probably as well as I do, what's your biggest concern about moving? Whilst there's a few answers in the top 3, top 4 that just still shuffle around, one of the most is the price. Because if I don't get that money, I can't move anyway. So, I'm hamstrung. So the price is more protected when a more transparent view of the house has been given.
And it's not something that's abnormal to the planet, because in a lot of other countries, we had the conversation with Sam, didn't we, Mark, talking about, pre-market appraisals and having an actual surveyor almost set the price, but also, give the snag list and give the honesty on what that property looks like. Because, people are buying houses that are 40, 50, 60 years old, and there is going to be things that come up on a home buyers or, definitely on a full structural, but it's getting the information to people earlier so they can make a better decision. And then there's no, horrible surprises as we get close to the end, ultimately, which is what no one wants.
It's what no one wants. It's the killer of deals, right? We have an aging housing stock. We all know that. And we've all talked about the lack of new build and so on over the years since the war, which means we've got an old housing stock. The problem is buyers that look at an old housing stock and read a survey are expecting to read it like it's a new housing stock. Never going to be. And surveyors are obviously, understandably, like conveyancers, that hamstrung by their commitments to their insurance, their professional indemnity insurance. So they've, of course, got to protect themselves.
And it happens it happens not particularly far from me in Scotland. This is the way that they buy and sell houses. You say around the planet, we're a couple of 100 miles probably from deals that are being done. And I've had many clients, you guys probably less so, but many clients who've bought in Scotland and then come back. And, the conversation around the buying and selling process there is so different because they have the home report, the upfront aspect of that. Will these surveys contain some valuation information, Bryan, or will that be left to the mortgage val?
That will be left very much to the mortgage val, but they will be certain types of survey, as you both know, can carry a valuation alongside, especially in a home buyers, for example. That can be used by a lender because it's exactly the same as having a normal survey from a lender. But lenders will probably still want to satisfy themselves, which is why they instruct the mortgage valuer. The other thing you just said is very relevant. That's also what we've been looking at, is that we hear a lot from agents, it's a bit like Scotland and so on and so on, without their full understanding of what that process is. Well, of course, the critical part of the Scottish process is a home condition report. Yeah. Which they got right, whereas we didn't in 2009, we completely bollocks it up, right, with HIPs.
Which is why you say about worrying about government doing it, right?
Absolutely, right? So private enterprise who understand, and not just private enterprise, because there's also a lot of technology, a lot of services that are being shoveled down estate agents' throats by people who've had very minor issues and thought, we'll make some money out of this. It's an easy target audience. Whereas what we are doing, all of you, and me included, and a number of us, because we've dedicated our whole lives to this process, to being in the trenches, we have a better understanding of the little points that will make a material difference to the speed of something, or the accuracy, or the conversion of it. And it may not be, I don't necessarily believe that it's right that a seller has a level 3 survey, a home full structure on their house when they list it. Home condition report would be a good idea. Let's take that first baby step and at least have something available up front for people that they can see and think, okay, right. But more importantly, to educate the home seller. That's the critical part, who gets stuck on a certain price. And well, you're not going to sell your house for that. You understand? Unless you fix these problems. So spend 10 grand doing that, getting that, repointing done and your guttering's changed and all this done, your driveway, cracks finished, or maybe be a bit more realistic on your price.
And that will help agents, won't it? I did it. We sold our house 18 months ago now when we were putting it on the market. Got one of my surveyor mates round and said, right, what's going to come up on the survey? He said, well, that'll come up. Right, go and get it done. And it meant that not only does the process move smoother, but you don't give the buyer the opportunity to get scared by those elements. Because if you mentioned the pointing, the gutters, they start to think, well, what else is wrong? Those are the bits that I didn't know that the surveyor knows. What are the bits that the surveyor doesn't know that are going to come around later? So it's all just about building, all of this is about building confidence in the transaction to give it a greater chance of completing, right?
Yeah, and I also think, what an amazing market we would have if you took an analogy that I have maybe a controversial view on this. Took an analogy of a house at £500,000, right? Okay, and you decided to market it for 475, knowing that its value was somewhere around 500, what you'd expect to sell it for, but because you'd had the survey and everything declared out up front, versus a house that at 500,000 you hadn't done any of that. Which one of those do you think is going to more likely go above 500,000? To me, it's the one at 475. Yeah. And irrespective of market conditions, because we also, if you're marketeers as an agent, you understand that's your role. You're not salespeople, you're not legal people, you're marketeers. That's it. That's the only job you are. And it's how good are you at it? And unfortunately, we think of marketeers as the people that are filming their dinner in TikTok and all this sort of stuff. And that's not marketeers. Marketeers are people who take a product to market successfully and launch it. And if you think about it, a property is like an iPhone. It's a product. We don't call it that. Clearly, it isn't the same. But in terms of the theory behind it, it is. You create the interest. If you create a massive demand, you're going to have, what's the term that Ticketmaster used for Oasis?
Dynamic pricing?
Dynamic pricing, right? It's the opposite to dynamic pricing in a estate agency.
Yeah.
Because of what happens before. Imagine if we managed to get that right, the benefit that would have to not only homeowners, but also buyers, because they'd be more interested, and also to agency commissions.
Yeah, is a perfect way to summarize what we're talking about today. Is trying to make the estate agent's job easier to do the thing that we're instructed to do, and try and make it better and more transparent and trusted for ultimately the public as well, which, you know, is why I'm a big fan of it. I just wish more estate agents would adopt it and adopt the change, adopt that challenge of doing it. And I know firsthand, we've spoke about it before, that when you put the right type of educational video out there for the world to see, you know, which I did previously, and highlighted this is a problem that a lot of people are scared of, like Mark said, this is a solution, and I offer that solution, you just get business off the back of it. You know, it is and was one of the best performing ads I've ever put out there. To just highlight, this is a problem that people are scared of. You probably are too. This is a solution, you know, in the Gazeal scenario, and we offer it. So reach out if you want to know more. And it still, for me, is the best result of an ad that I've put out. So, you know, it shows, doesn't it, that it's out there for the public to want to use, want to buy into. It's our job to facilitate it as estate agents now.
Absolutely. Well, they said that J.K. Rowling took 9 different publishing turndowns before Harry Potter got made. So I'm not giving up on Gazeal. No. You just got to keep going and keep going and keep getting the message across in the right cultural way at the very beginning we talked about. And hopefully, you know, more and more people come on board. I mean, we're probably, I would definitely say by the number of meetings that we have every day, we're far more popular now than we were when we first started. We were than 2 years ago, you know. And so it is for me. I just look at this as a war of attrition. Agents come and go, but you keep going, you keep learning, you keep developing. We're a cultural development business as well. We want to keep learning and changing, and not just keep dumping stuff onto agents. It's all finesses from what we learned to take the next step forward. You know, and then we hope that more and more people do it. Eventually, then, you know, there'll be enough homeowners get helped.
Yeah, brilliant stuff.
Yeah, that comes right through. And, you know, you talked about it at the start, having the culture of helping people. That comes right through, as you say, helping sellers, helping buyers. If people are wanting to get in touch, Bryan, what's the best way?
Pigeon probably at the moment, because it sells smoke signals, one of the two. Just, you know, I'm on LinkedIn, reach out. I'm all over Gazeal's website, so you can find me there. I just think that you know, it's tough, right, for agents right now. I often think about, if I was starting an agency now, my God, the amount of stuff you've got to put together and then fish through, compared to 5 years, well, compared to a couple of years ago. I mean, you guys know this better than anybody, all right? It's a real challenge. And then we've got to try and get all that packed in. It's just take a pause, take a breath. What's our core message? Why do we do this? And what can we add to help people with that? And it doesn't have to be as stressful as it is. And as Ian said, this is not about selling anything to anybody. And I'm not talking about Gazeal, I'm talking about estate agency. If you give advice to people based on solid fact and evidence, they'll use you. Yeah. But they'll use you on your terms. If you don't do that, you're in the boxing ring.
Yeah. No, love that. Great way to finalize it. Thank you for your time. Thanks for coming on and sharing exciting new stuff as well, which is great. Yeah. And I'm sure there will be agents that will listen and reach out. And I'm sure there's agents that have listened today that have got a lot of value from it as well. And at least a lot of questions going through their mind of things to improve and how they can help. So that's what it's all about. So thanks, Bryan.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks, guys.
A massive thank you once again to Bryan Mansell for joining us today. We said on the intro, Ian, that this was quite transformational. When Bryan came and spoke to me about this, and I subsequently invited him on the podcast to talk to, you know, the wider industry about it, I was like, shit, this is genuinely transformational. And, you know, estate agents might say they don't want to use it, but isn't it fabulous to have the cash flow ability to pull down your pipeline if you've secured it by a reservation agreement at any stage during that process? That's a game changer for estate agency. Even if they don't use it, the ability to have it and have that facility, you can almost use it like, you know, an overdraft, basically.
And I think for the self-employed model, you know, I know I'm biased on that, but I think for the self-employed model, it's
huge.
It's a massive, massive footstep towards, you know, what is the scariest part, which is the first couple of months of going self-employed because of the fear factor of not having income. So if you are securing a deal, through a reservation, first of all, as a marketeer, like Bryan says, it gives you a genuine USP in your marketplace. This is the problem, this is the solution, this is what I offer. If you focus in that as a self-employed agent, and you set it up with a reservation, and then you've got that cash flow scenario where you can go, well, look, 95.5% chance this is going to go through, and I can draw a little bit of that cash out, which gives me a bit of a marketing ability to go and get some more business and leads. It's just a no-brainer. You're not going to see the big corporates and stuff like that, I would imagine, tapping into it. But for those independents, this can really be the difference, I think, for people. So, and I love the whole concept of, surveys up front, security in the reservation agreement. I just wish it was normalized. We use the Scotland analogy, but I just wish it was normalized. Every time I have a conversation with Bryan, I just realize how ridiculous our property market is in England.
Yeah. That's exactly it. When you look at it, and I say, we're not just next door, but we're not particularly far away from Scotland. And I have had clients talk about that process, and it's just makes sense. You talk about it like this, particularly the deposit, and you talk about buying a car, buying a holiday, even less things than that, and you put a deposit down. We do business in a stressful, emotional process, and we don't have any form of commitment from either side. It's just, like you say, I wish it was normalized, but I think I probably agree with Bryan in terms of, I'm not sure we can trust government to do this. When you look at HIPS and how much of a shit show that was, we're 20 years on, it's not moved on at all, it's not advanced. But actually, if you've got a business that are willing to support you so that your clients can go and get the surveys and go through this process and give people more information when they are making the decision to purchase, that can only be a good thing for buyers, sellers, estate agents, and then the businesses that are around that as well. So I'm a big fan. I just wish we could do it more. So that's my commitment from today, to take it away and have more conversations with the team about it, make it more normalized in our business, because we have it, we use it, but we're nowhere near as regular as we should be with it.
Yeah, totally agree. No, great episode. Really enjoyed it. Always enjoyed chatting with Bryan, and much appreciate him coming on and get in contact with him. Do the training. There's lots of great videos on the Gazeal website as well to try and break it down a little bit more if it ran too fast for you, or if you're in the car and you couldn't make notes. So go and check out the website for sure.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you once again to Bryan for joining us. As you know, we do this because we love our industry. We want to see it improve and get better. If you have enjoyed today's episode, please share it out on social, share it out on colleagues, or reach out to Bryan, Ian, or myself. Thank you very much for listening. We'll see you again next week.